helping creators navigate the waters of podcasting. Welcome to the Podcast Cadet Training Series, where we simplify the world of podcasting with techniques and advice from professionals across the podcasting industry. Well, hello everybody. Chris Jordan here, your host, coming to you live from the Podcast Cadet Studio here in Austin, Texas. Welcome once again to the Podcast Cadet Training Series. This is episode 3. We're still so early in this series, but been covering so much great meat. Our guest today, once again, is the amazing Wayne Sutton. We will be talking to Wayne about his new website. Fantastic stuff over here. NeuroPersuasionCoach.com. We're going to be talking about the concept of neuropersuasion and exactly not only what that is, but how that can help us in the world of podcasting, not only as hosts, but for those of you out there doing podcasting for your business, for those of you out there that are literally setting yourself up as we say here at this company, a quote, trusted voice in an industry. It is utterly so important. And a lot of it has to do with literally the way that you mentally approach a situation. You kind of have to learn to shoot from the side with your own thoughts sometimes. You got to learn to get rid of that own negative self-talk, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be getting into all of that and more with Wayne Sutton from NeuroPersuasionCoach.com right after this quick commercial. Have you considered starting a podcast? Looking for a way to make your business a voice of authority in an industry? Then Podcast Cadet is the solution for you. Whether starting a podcast for yourself, your brand, business, school, church, or just plain fun, Podcast Cadet is here to help you navigate the waters of the podcast industry. Specializing in one-on-one consultation and training with industry professionals in fields ranging from podcast technology and editing to distribution, monetization, and even social media strategies. Podcast Cadet tailors their services to the specific needs of you and your podcast. Do you already have a podcast and trying to find ways to engage and grow your audience? Sign up for your Podcast Cadet audit today and let us help you explore new and exciting ways to leverage your content and elevate your podcast brand to whole new levels. From consultational workshops to affordable podcast production and maintenance packages, Podcast Cadet is your one-stop shop for everything podcast related on the internet. Visit podcastcadet.com today to sign up for your consultation or training. That website again is podcastcadet.com. And of course, full disclosure, folks, I am one of the founders and owners of Podcast Cadet. The whole reason I started this program with my wife, who is an improv and comedy script writing coach, and other people that I know who are involved in the world of social media, media distribution, things like that. The whole reason that we came up with this concept is that so many people start off so impetuously in this endeavor called podcasting, but they don't necessarily consider all the gears necessary. And one of the gears necessary, especially if you are doing podcasting for your business. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean like podcasting for profit, folks. This could be an internal podcast within a company. Mind you, this could be a podcast that you're starting about the world of aluminum rain gutters and the technology of rain gutters, you know, because, hey, I own a rain gutter company. I don't, but you get the idea. That is exactly what our guest, neuropersuasion expert Wayne Sutton will be talking about today. Wayne, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you. And I love how you started that with the amazing Wayne Sutton. I'm like, I'm going to listen to that. I've never been called amazing. So, next time my wife says, "Hey, you're not amazing," I'm like, "Yeah, well, I have proof that I am." So.
I beg to differ.
That's right. But I am doing great.
Say otherwise.
But I thank you for having me on. I look forward to sharing, talking about when I say persuasion. When I think about persuasion, I really just think about communication and impacting the world through communication.
Sure,
it could be a small world, your family. It could be a global stage. So I am more than excited to be on the show today.
Well, once again, thank you so much for coming back on the show to talk about this amazing new website that you have, this amazing new program, NeuroPersuasion Coaching. Let's get into that a little bit, and then we'll get into how that relates to the world of podcasting, how that relates to everything that we do as business people and as podcast hosts even.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think one thing is podcast hosts, what you have to remember is if you want people to know, like, and trust you, a lot of people use that terminology, know, like, and trust, all in one little cliche, but that's 3 separate words. They may know you, then they may begin to like you, then they may begin to trust you. And when someone trusts you, it's the easiest to get somebody to do business with you. Sure. To grab a hold and follow you. If you're not just trying to sell someone something, but maybe you have a mission, you have a purpose outside of even business. They need to trust that you are going to be able to help them and that they're working with like-minded people. That's why I love podcasting. Yeah. Because I can jump on YouTube and I can watch a video, and I do that a lot. I can turn on a documentary, but if I find a podcast that I enjoy, me personally, I listen to one episode. If I like it, I'll scroll, episode 1. And then I'm listening to it episode after episode after episode. So either I lose interest or I'm like truly indoctrinated into this person. That's the power of podcasting. If you bring the good, and if you use communication properly, I truly cannot think of a better source to build a business around except podcasting because of that. Well,
and that's an interesting point, because as someone who produced in radio, live streaming, local TV, things like that, that was such a big part of that, quote, trusted voice concept, was that not anybody could be reading you the news, let's say.
Sure.
Anybody could be giving you news of the weird, all kinds of stuff. But the reason why we tune into the morning show that we tune into in the morning, the reason why we tune into that talk radio show at lunch, is because we like that host. There is something about them that makes it seem like a fireside chat, makes it seem like you are sitting there with a friend with a cup of coffee, or even like my show, Dudes and Beer. Like you're sitting there having a beer, having this deep discussion with somebody.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that once you tie into that, there is this beautiful interpersonal relationship between host and audience.
Yes.
And that's what you mean by neuropersuasion. And it's not like mesmerizing people with your look, or giving people subtle clues within your conversation to get them to cull to your way, so to speak. You're not going to make anybody bark like a dog on the bus, people. Yeah. But
that's a great point. I'm glad we'll definitely get into that. The differences and and well, let's start cracking the nut, per se, of neuropersuasion and what that really is all about. Just so that everybody understands that, so that we can kind of turn it back around to the world of podcasting. Yeah, so I'll start with kind of the mission statement behind it, or our tagline, if you will, because our tagline says it all. And from that, the tagline is our mission statement. The mission statement is what neuropersuasion is. It's learning to influence yourself. Influence yourself, influence others, and then impact the world. So I'll give you an example. If a podcast host is ready to do a podcast, but maybe their energy isn't there, maybe their self-doubt, whatever it may be.
Sure.
A businessman is about to walk into a meeting, but his energy isn't there. His self-doubt, he had a fight with his wife, and he's bringing that into it. A person will be less productive. And when you're less productive, then it's almost like this spiraling effect. The low productivity, the low mindset just brings low results, and low results bring low productivity and low mindset. And so we have to get out of that. And estate management, and I'll give a short example of this in a moment, but estate management, learning how to control yourself. What beliefs do you have? What limited beliefs? Can you control your own state of mind? It's only then that you can influence others. And influence others. People say, well, Wayne, what does that mean? Does that mean, as you said, make them bark, cluck like a chicken, bark like a dog on stage? And yes, I can do that. But it really doesn't, other than a few laughs, it's not that productive. So, so instead of, and we're not going to hypnotize somebody to say, come do business with me. At the same time, we are going to use the way that we were created. Our mind has certain pathways of making good decisions or bad decisions. Yeah. That's just a reality. And some people know that, and they make great decisions. There's other people that make bad decisions, and we need to be able to help them recognize their decision-making patterns. And when I say influence, it can be used. In fact, I'm really, really want to use this inside of the education system, because I believe when teachers and professors need to recognize how people learn, but also be more persuasive in getting that information across.
Yes.
It can be used in the boardrooms. It's been used in real estate. I've trained people in a number of different industries where they go, hey, if my sales do not double, I'm losing everything. Great. Then let's learn how to influence the person in front of you. Now, I've had people say, Wayne, that sounds very manipulative, and et cetera, et cetera. You can engage any word around that you choose, but if you are helping someone with the right product or service and they need it, then I think it's your right, and I think it's your responsibility to be able to influence properly. And then finally, impacting the world. And so that world, for me, when I use NeuroPersuasion at home, I'm helping my daughters, my wife make great decisions. We're building a family structure around that. When I go and I go out and I speak, whether it be in business or ministry, then I go out and I use NeuroPersuasion in a way that's going to help impact and change that world. So that's a long answer to say it's all about controlling the way we think and helping other people think in a way that's going to be most productive for them. It does include persuasion. It does include influence. Podcasting, if you think about this, all of the podcast hosts, people are hearing your words. And there's audio, I mean, there's video, I get that as well, but they're hearing your words, and your words will influence the way people think, not only your tonality and your rate, but even some of the language patterns, the questions that you ask. So that's why I'm really, really excited about using and teaching NeuroPersuasion inside the realm of podcasting.
I think it's very important to talk about that for just a minute, just the fact of that lingering self-doubt that you mentioned a minute ago that so many people have when they begin their podcasting journey, or even whenever they begin their business journey. You know, can I do this? Is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And it's really one of those, like, for me, it's just like you said, do you have a mission? Is your business a mission? Because if it is, you will wake up and work on it like 18 hours a day, every day without complaint.
Yes.
You know? And I think a lot of people get into business sometimes because they think something might be easier than what they're doing. But at the same time, there's a negative self-talk that happens with a lot of people that discourages them from pursuing that independence, discourages them from starting a podcast for their business, because they think like, yeah, sure, like I do roofs, but who the heck's going to listen to somebody talk about roofing, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think what you just said is that it's the self-talk. But all self-talk, even limited self-talk, comes from there's a genesis effect. You know, the word genesis means a new beginning. It means a new birth. There's a reason somebody thinks the way they think. I can't do this. I'll never be able. I'm not good with technology. I'm not good. You know, who cares about roofing? Any of those questions comes because something in our past has made us think that way, or we heard somebody say it in a way that maybe somebody we respected, or we tried something. This is the big one. We didn't fully commit, but we try something and it failed. And the mind says, ooh, let's stay away from failure. Failure doesn't feel good. See, in NeuroPersuasion, I talk a lot about the different chemicals in the brain. Now, such as when we do something that's good and we get a reward, that dopamine, that dopamine addiction that people are seeking. When you really connect, like you said, that fireside chat, sometimes you really connect with someone and literally even just listening, you can start having oxytocin flow through the blood, and so will they. And it's just amazing. You build a massive rapport.
Yeah.
With me, I want to learn that if I'm thinking something or I catch myself, I have to catch the words, not just so I can change it. If somebody says, I'm not good at martial arts, and they're fixing to go get in a fight, I don't know, not just changing the words to, no, I'm good, but why did I believe that anyway? What was it that made me believe that? So NeuroPersuasion, I have people come and go, teach me how to double my sales, teach me how to influence. I'm like, well, let's work on you first. May not be as sexy, but it's what's going to bring real change. And then we can help people influence others as well. Well,
now, exactly what do you mean by that? Whenever you say, let's focus on you first, because I spent my years in youth ministry, all that kind of fun stuff. And one of the things that I used to teach people in a sex and sexuality class was if you're looking for somebody to complete you, you need to figure yourself out first.
Yeah.
You really need to love yourself for who you are, mistakes, flaws, everything that's there. Be willing to work on yourself. Be willing to say, yes, I'm wrong. Exactly where does somebody start that process, especially whenever you're talking about podcast host, whenever you're talking about that concept of I'm about to step into the ring of being a trusted voice, being somebody that someone comes to either for advice in this industry or just good entertainment.
Yeah. So one of the places to start is in the emotion realm. Now, a lot of coaches and consultants will have you go, and we start this analytical road, like when you were 7 years old, what happened to you? That's okay, but there's a quicker way. And that's one thing about NeuroPersuasion as well. I believe in collapsing time. Let's get the effects and let's get things working quicker. So I'm a podcast host or a podcast host wannabe. I've recorded 2 episodes and I got 3 downloads and I'm freaking out and I don't know what to do. Should I still? But what the first thing to do is you have to, what we call future pace. And that means looking ahead in the future. And now, as you talked about in ministry, when I was in helping people in ministry, I would say, hey, let's look at what your future is going to look like. So the teenagers that are, they're fighting hormones, they're wanting to have sex. And we're like, wait a minute, let's look at how you're going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now. What does that picture look like? Because what you're about to do may not lead to that. So everybody that's listening, unless you're driving a car or doing something unsafe, just play with me. We're just going to have a moment here of fun. So as you're listening to this podcast and you're hearing me, just close your eyes. And I want you to imagine, anybody can imagine, it's simple. We do it all the time. But to imagine maybe 1, 2, maybe even 3 years in the future. And I want you to imagine that your podcast is reaching the people you wanted to reach. I want you to, how does that look? Because you already know how the studio looks, your logo, You know how your audience looks. And even with your eyes closed, I want you to just make that picture. Really simple. Just imagine. But more importantly, I want you to notice how you feel. You are a podcast host. You're reaching the audience that you know is important. You're making the money that you know you want to make. All of that. But how do you feel? With me, with NeuroPersuasion, that's my goal, is to help somebody envision that first. Because then when you go, I don't know if I should record another one. I don't know if I should record. I don't know if I'm getting any viewers. Maybe I should change. Maybe I should just give up. That vision of you in the future, reaching the people, doing what you want to do, that's going to stand stronger. And we always make one of the number one rules of persuasion. We always make decisions based on emotion every single time. Even if you analyze things, the emotional part of the brain makes a decision. So that emotion of how it's going to look when it's great is going to be stronger than your negative emotion in the moment. So that's just one area. And that's something you can do multiple times. You can just close your eyes and think how you want it to look 1, 2, 3 years now. How does it feel? You've got to get the emotion in there. And I never understood that until I started studying how the brain works. And I'm like, well, why is the emotion got to be there? It sounds a little woo-woo, little new agey woo-woo stuff. And law of attraction. I'm not into that. I'm like, no, I want science behind it. And one of my mentors said, because when you get the emotion strong and you hold it for a minute, the mind will literally start creating into the bloodstream. You'll have the endorphins. You'll have the dopamine. You have a chemical change in the mind, but you also have changes inside the brain. Literally, the brain can rewire itself. Now, that doesn't happen the first time you do it, but it can over a period of maybe 20, 21 days, 28 days. So that's how a podcast host goes, I want to be the best. Then you have to make that image of what it looks like. Because here's another thing that's very interesting. If it's not, if you make that image and you can't pull that emotion, maybe it isn't for you. And then you can recognize that quickly and move on. But that's the first step in persuasion is really getting the emotions behind it and moving forward. And remember, every decision is based on emotion. I've never had anybody prove me wrong on that. I've had people come up front in my seminars and, well, what about this, Wayne? And before it was over, they're like, you're right.
Yeah, you're right. I just felt something.
Yeah. That's right. I just felt something. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting way to put it. As the son of a salesman and a saleswoman, it really was, and I had the very unique opportunity to observe my dad in the field working and selling and things like that when I was very young, because he would come and pick us up for the weekend, and oftentimes whenever he'd pick us up, he still had a call or two to make on the way home at different shops. At the time, he was a regional sales manager here in South Texas for Cooper Tire and Rubber Company. So he was selling commas and zeros worth of tires whenever he went through a front door. And it was always a casual conversation. It was always a conversation just like we're having right now, man. You know?
That's it. That is the power of true persuasion. It should be conversational. It should be, Yeah, it was somebody listening to somebody, whether it was, talking about their wife, talking about their bass fishing trip, whatever. It was that kind of that bartender's ear, so to speak. Of being able to really the biggest skill that I have found, be it selling, closing, or being a podcast host, it's shut up and listen. Glad you said that, because most people that even think that they listen are not actively listening. But there's a couple of things that happen when you actively listen. And number one, it means listening, like you said, shut up and listen. You're not thinking of what am I going to respond to next? What am I going to respond to next? And we can't cover all of this on a podcast, obviously, but there's we're not going to hypnotize people to bark like chickens or cluck like chickens or bark like dogs. But there is a focused awareness. That sounds better than hypnosis, right? Yes. Focused awareness technique that we teach that helps people with active listening, and it helps the unconscious recognize the key points when you're talking and I'm listening to help bring up relevant conversational stories. But active listening, and the best way to active listen, guys, is when somebody finishes talking, is learn those one or two little words like "and," or mirror back the last two or three words of their sentence. Because what happens when you say "and" or "but," you automatically, their unconscious says, "Wait a minute, they're asking for more information. I must not be finished," and they continue talking. Yeah. The more someone talks, they hear their own voice. There's nothing more comforting to a person than their own voice. This is why they can go from skeptical to maybe neutral to really liking you, because when somebody feels really comfortable talking, they start releasing different chemicals in their mind. And if they're looking or talking to you, it's attached to you. So that's one way to increase your active listening is "and," "but," or just mirror back the last two or three, four words of the sentence they used. And then what that does is make them unconsciously go, yeah, he gets me. They understand me. Now for podcasting, when you're the host and you're talking, if you're doing an interview, make sure that person you're interviewing, you're asking "and" or "but," or you're mirroring back. If you're just talking into the microphone to an audience, there's some tricks on that too. There's some things that we can teach that can really help somebody go, wow, they understand me, even though you've never met them. Yeah. And so but you nailed it. Active listening is the best way to sell, because they'll tell you what they need.
Yeah, precisely. If you just sit there and let somebody tell their story, they will explain and unfold everything, including the emotional connection to the project that you're about to undertake with them. Whether or not they have an emotional connection, which if they do, should utterly change the way that you approach somebody, be it behind the microphone or in a sales situation. So yeah, and even once again, that negative self-talk, that idea of I can't, like that. I have a 4-year-old, and that is one of the big things that I am trying to coax out of him, not hammer out of him, but coax out of him is the words but I can't.
So, now I have two 4-year-olds. I have 4-year-old twin daughters, and
God bless.
So I get that. I can't. So one of the God bless my wife. But so one of the things that I use in that situation is according to whom. Who said that? Who said that? Yeah. You know, if we go back, I'm going to go back into the Bible where Adam messed up and he's been kicked out of the beautiful garden, and he says, "I'm naked." And then the Lord said, "Who told you you were naked?" Yeah. Who told you that? And so when a child or an adult, anybody says, "I can't do this," then it's like, who said that? Who said you couldn't?
Yeah. Not
because they have to answer that in their head. Yeah. But who said that? I'm confused because I tell my daughter when she says I'm shy or I can't do this, I'm like, wait a minute. You're a Sutton. So I have to give her a different identity that I want her to own. Go. And so, no, you're a Sutton, and Suttons are not shy. We're actually brave and courageous and honor people. So what you just said isn't you, that maybe somebody's influenced you. And I remember the first time I told my daughter that, she was about 6. She said, "Suttons are not shy?" I said, "No, we're respectful of other people, but we're not shy. And you're a Sutton." And there's some psychological anchoring that we did there. But anyway, the point is, she was like, "I got this." She literally said, "I got this," about what she was talking about. So it's that. Now, as an adult, when somebody says, "I can't," no, well, that either you have a clarity issue, we can work through that, or that's saying to me you've never been willing to take time to learn. Which one is it? you know? But yeah, persuasion, that's why I said persuasion is so much more than, you know, just selling somebody something. It is persuading everything in your life. It's persuading in areas that most people would never think about, with your children, with your spouse. And as long as your heart of integrity is there, then it will not be manipulative. If the heart's not there, yeah, it can definitely be.
Well, and, you know, it reminds me a lot of back in my band days, back in the days when I was running sound at venues and with bands, and sometimes 4 or 5 bands in a night.
Yeah.
I remember I came back to Houston, and at that point, I'd been gone to Maine for about 5 years. And when I moved home, I reconnected with my old Grateful Dead band, things like that, and started running sound for them again and all that kind of stuff. And the drummer was like, "You changed, man. Like you're not like all laid back like you used to be. You're, you know, you seem really cocky." And I'm like, "Cocky? Wow." I wouldn't say I'm cocky. I would definitely say I'm confident in my skills and in what I provide, given any situation. It's what I do for a living, Dave.
Yeah. And
it can come off as cockiness, I suppose, but at the same time, it is that conviction, it is that self-persuasion that, like you said, you are something different. When you step into that role, you're putting on a hat. You're turning on a switch. You know?
Yes.
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when somebody says you seem cocky or yes, cocky or whatever, one of the questions, I mean, this is a question I ask a lot of people, is according to, like I did with the child, according to whom? Why? I don't understand what that means. Can you clarify for me?
Yeah.
And because then they have to go in and go, wait a minute, what does that mean? Cocky? Question mark? You know, cocky? A little bit of tonality is everything in persuasion.
Sure.
We know that. We hear that so much, especially podcasting. You know, what are you saying with your words, but how are you saying it? When I go into a sales, let's just talk real business. I go in to sell someone something. I don't want to come in with high pressure. There was a time for that. I get it. There was a time many decades ago. Yeah,
like 1983, when I was like 8 years old, the high pressure sales thing was it, where it's like, all right, you know, we got $250,000. Can't do it. See you later. Going to the door now.
Yeah. But now, there was a time when the high pressure, but for me, it's really, number one, if I told people I can do 5 sales calls in a day, and let's just take a 50%, let's take a close 3. But I had to pressure them. I had to use shame and guilt. I mean, I remember in insurance, when I sold insurance years ago, if Mr. Johnson didn't want to buy insurance, I'd be like, well, listen, don't you care about Miss Johnson? Or don't you care if she dies? If you die, she don't have nothing. I mean, that was taught, you know, just shame them, guilt them, get their signature, get their check. Okay, so you can do that today, or you can come in with some low resistance questions and ask the right questions and get them to decide. Here's the biggest key to influence, the biggest key. When someone else has made it their decision to buy from you or to follow you or whatever, they will usually not argue with themselves. So if I can ask the right questions and get them to go, you know what, I really want this insurance. I feel like I need this.
Yeah.
And then I can say, but why is that? And if you notice how I said that, but why do you feel like you need this? Then they are going to sell me on why they need to buy the insurance. Now, end of the day, salesman A used high pressure, salesman B used NeuroPersuasion. Both ended up with 3 sales. Both lost 2 sales. But who's going to feel better at the end of the night when they go home to their family? Who's going to feel better because you didn't have to get high pressure, adrenaline, and you feel like you truly helped somebody, not that you truly manipulated somebody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it really is that, once again, that subtle art of conversation, that putting people at ease to begin with, you know, and I mean, sales, I think situations like that are uncomfortable enough for folks to begin with, you know, and even as a host myself, just to bring this back to podcasting, folks, like, when I talk to people on my show, which we get into some hard topics sometimes in one of my shows, like, man, we talk about human trafficking, all kinds of stuff. Like, there are deep, hard topics.
Yeah.
And they can be uncomfortable for some people to talk about, even the people talking about them. So I normally connect with them about 30 minutes before. We lightly go over a couple things. What do you want to promote? You have a book or any appearances? You know, are you out on the speaking circuit right now? And then after we chat for a little while, just casually, like you and I did before we started recording this today, it's like, well, just so you know, that's pretty much how the show runs. It's nothing high stress. You aren't going to have a producer on the other end popping in, telling you things. It's going to be a casual conversation between a couple people about something that you enjoy talking about and that you are passionate about. So, and really kind of leaving it at that, you know, like, hey, once again, if you aren't comforted by the sound of your own voice, and if you aren't okay enough to talk about you and either the book that you've written, the topic that you've spent half your life researching, the passion project that you just finished, or the film that you just finished writing, like, wow, you maybe really need to rethink what you're doing out there.
Yeah.
Like, just from a guest perspective, you know, like, if you're uncomfortable talking about it, and if you as a host can't put somebody at ease, you know.
You said it great there. You're part of the host. As the host, your responsibility is to play someone at ease.
Yeah.
Number of years, we're going to go back to, we're going back about 12 years now. There was TalkShoe. I don't even know if TalkShoe is still around, TalkShoe.com. But TalkShoe, I had a show, and I was doing Christian ministry, and I was interviewing people, and this gentleman said, hey, I'd love to be on your show. I died. I went to hell. This is my experience. I wrote a book about it. I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. And what was normally should have been a great 1 hour great call was about 8 minutes. And I was like, this man had no ability. And afterwards, I'm like, hey, man, I appreciate it, but you've got to learn how to communicate your story. Your story is powerful if you can communicate your story. Yeah. But as a host, you're exactly right. What you did before the call was great. Getting to know me again and just talking about the website and all of the hosts that are listening to this, if you have a client that's maybe, or a guest that's not really opening up, that's why you need to learn to persuade. You need to learn what language patterns that you use to get someone talking. If they don't shut up, you got to learn what language pattern interrupts to politely interject and bring people back, chunking up, chunking down. Yeah. You know?
Well, so, and even that in and of itself, what are the, like, as an editor, as somebody who edits and somebody who produces, I'm not prone to cutting a lot of content out of a show. Right. I prefer the live format. I love the live format. I am from a radio world where, hey, I had 3 million people a day listening to the radio broadcast I had going out. Like, I better mash those buttons right every time, you know? Yeah. And it's really one of those, like, I find it funny how a lot of people want to cut out every stammer, anything like that. And for me, that's the fact of losing some of, I guess, the humanity of the conversation. Yeah. Some of the warmth and just general ambiance of what would happen if would you be that aggravated with the person if they were stammering like that when they were talking to you, like, over a drink at the bar? Like, would you really be that aggravated that you couldn't put up with that personally? So you can't put up with it in an episode of a show that you like? So
good point. Very good point. Sure.
And when it comes to that, a lot of the reason why I got off on that, Jag, real quick, was the idea of parroting. One of the concepts that I have given people to stop using filler words and to stop stammering as much as they did was go parakeet. Get yourself like a tiny little locker mirror and put it up in front of your computer monitor or something like that. Because there is that concept of eye contact with somebody, them being present in the room. And not always is it the fact that people are recording with video. Frequently, it's the way that we're doing this, where it's via audio, so it can be uncomfortable for some people when there is no eye contact to make. So how can people, I guess, without being in that physical place with someone, really start that path of persuasion, so to speak, without being physically there?
One of the greatest ways is, as I said earlier, is asking questions. And if I'm going to persuade someone, help someone, I'm on whether it's a podcast or whether I'm doing a sales call or whether I'm trying to save someone's life. So I've done a lot of ministry, counseling, and really one of the greatest ways is to, as you said earlier, listening, filling in the missing pieces. Most people need someone to listen to them. People want to be appreciated. People, in fact, there's 3 words that I literally have a green sticky note on my computer. Even though I've taught this for years and years and years, I keep this sticky note because people want to be understood. People want to be respected. People want to be valued. People want to be appreciated. But understood, respected, and valued. And if I had to say, outside of any business, just person to person, if you can make somebody feel like you understand them, if you can respect their time, if you can value them as a human, even if it's a different belief system, then you can really have an influence in their life and them on you.
Yeah. And
this is the value is so important in today's day, because when you look at different religious beliefs, you look at different political beliefs, you look at it's really, really, we're in a moment of time when there's a lot of polarization.
Yeah.
But I don't have to agree with somebody to say, you know what, I value you as a person. And if I don't fully understand everything they're going through, I don't fully understand their point, can I find a point? And what I often will say is, in that area, I truly, truly understand where you're coming from. I'm not saying I truly understand where they're coming from in every area. Number one, it's not truthful. Number two, I have no way of influencing them if I'm just like them. But earlier, and that's something I use a lot, is earlier you said this, and you know what? In that area, I truly, truly understand where you're coming from. And it just builds this little bit of a connection. But I think the biggest thing we have to learn to do is talk the way the person needs to hear and listen the way the person needs to be heard. And that goes back to, again, a lot of training in linguistics and language. But to sum it up in a quick little mini 1-minute answer is, find out what's important to that person. And you cannot find out what's important to them if you're talking. Find out what's important, why that's important. And most people are going to give you a surface answer. If I went and asked anybody, why is podcasting important to you? They'll give me an answer, but I listen. I take notes if it's appropriate. And then I try to find some common ground, but then I want to take that and go, why is that important? I'll tell you a quick story of how I truly became, for lack of better words, just obsessed with persuasion and helping people. I was in my late 20s, so we're going to go back 2 decades, okay?
All right.
But I'm in my late 20s, and I'm studying everything that I can find on human behavior, counseling, consulting, hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, name it, I'm studying it. And I'm saying, okay, I take the approach of Bruce Lee: absorb what is useful, reject what is useless. So I'm bringing it all in. And I had a friend, and now she's mid-40s, and she's torn. And she's like, Wayne, I really feel like I love this guy, and I feel like I love this guy too. What do I do? What do I do? And I first just made light of it and kind of made jokes about it. Then I realized this is serious to her. She's middle age. She's ready to move on in life. 2 very, very different people. And I said, wow, what if, and here's my question, what if I could give you the answer? Would you listen to me? She said, I don't know. I said, but what if you could feel the answer inside of you? You knew it was the right answer, and there was no doubt whatsoever. She said, yeah, that's my problem. I can't do that. I said, really? Who told you you couldn't? I said, let's do something. And I didn't hypnotize her, but I just said, I want you to close your eyes. I just want you to relax for a moment. And I want you to think about a relationship. I want you to take guy A and guy B and just kind of push them aside for a moment. I just want you to think about a relationship in general. What's really important to you in a relationship? If you had to say, is a very powerful little phrase. Because sometimes people go, I don't know. But if you had to say, I've never had somebody not answer me if I asked that way. But if you had to say what's most important in a relationship, and she said, and I was going to tell you, I don't remember what she said 2 decades ago, but she said something very surface level. You know, they care for me, they're good looking, they love me, whatever. I said, okay. And I listened to her tonality for 1 or 2 of the words. Okay, I get that. You said, and I used those very same words. See, every word has a meaning. Every word has a different meaning for everybody. So I took those words and I said, what about that's really important? And she began telling me what's important about that. And this time it went a little bit longer. This time I could see her shoulders literally drop, her physiology change. She opened her eyes, and I said, no, close your eyes, because I got to ask you one more. You said this was important. Why ultimately? And I took her, so we asked what's important basically 3 times based on her own verbiage. While telling me what's ultimately important, I could see tears down both sides of her face. And she opened her eyes, and she said, it's John. It's John. And I said, why? But why? And I made her say it, and she went through this. So today, 20 plus years later, her and John are married. They're happy. Life is good. But she couldn't make her, she was confused with emotions, and she was confused with what she thought she wanted in a relationship. So that's why I said persuasion is more than just getting somebody to sign a check or send over an invoice. Pay an invoice. It's really about changing people's lives. Yeah.
Well, and like you said earlier, it's really that's the whole reason why the beginning of your tagline is, and the company motto is, influence yourself, influence others, impact the world. Because until you can really learn to let go and trust yourself and know that things are going to be okay. You have to sell yourself to yourself just as much as you do to anybody else on a daily basis. It really is that first decision when you wake up in the morning as to how you're going to approach your day, what you're going to do today, and it's so important to have that self-grasp and that, I'm not going to say feeling of importance, but that feeling of grounded as to who you are and what your path is. Because that as a host of a show and as the owner of a business, if you're hosting a show for your business, that is what makes that trusted voice. That is what makes somebody, as a producer, that's what makes somebody a trusted voice.
Yeah.
And whenever you look at those, like a few people just off the top of my head, 3 of them, whether you like them or not, that stand out to me hugely as far as radio broadcast, at least, that knew how they influenced their audience, how hugely they influenced their audience, and they were able to monopolize on that audience influence. And whether you like him or not, it was Howard Stern.
Yep.
Rush Limbaugh and Alex Jones. Like Alex Jones or not, the guy still, every bit of his content, the 4-hour show that he put out every single day that used to go out to numerous platforms and is now stricken all across the internet, platform-wise, still gets millions of listeners a day and millions of dollars a year on their own website. Because
they're speaking to...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No. So they're speaking to an audience unapologetically.
Yeah.
And that's so key. Howard Stern, shock jock, talk about whatever, and he didn't apologize for it. Rush Limbaugh, here's my conservative beliefs. We're going to do, again, didn't apologize. And Alex, as you said, banned.
You really don't apologize.
What happened when they said banned? He just started banned video. That was it. Now, this is banned. It's that controversial people want to know. And if he doesn't believe what he says, he's the best actor. No, he's the thespian I've never seen. He believes what he says, and that's so important. So is Howard influencing the world? I don't know. Did Rush influence people in the way they believed, the way they voted, yes. Is Alex influencing people? Yes. As you said, like them or not, they are great influencers because they're speaking to their audience without reservation.
Wayne,
they're speaking truth.
Yeah. That's just it. They do it, and like you said earlier, unapologetically. Like even myself with Dudes and Beer, it started as I'll be and I'm honest with my audience all the time. My hardcore listening audience knows. Like, I started Dudes and Beer so that I was forced to get out once a week. Literally, I started Dudes and Beer so that I would have a social life and talk with people outside of the world of audio-visual once a week.
That's amazing. That's good. No.
And it was like,
great.
I don't care if we agree. I don't care if we disagree. Bring 3 topics in a 6-pack, and we're going to sit back and have some beers, and we're going to dig deep, like we're going to talk about topics in the news and what we really feel about them. And then we started having hardcore guests. And now it's gotten to the point that even myself as a host and producer has to step back from the creator point of view and go, where is this audience taking me? What journey are we on? And does it behoove us to keep this name? And at 5 years into a show, it does not, Wayne. So I'm rebranding.
And that's okay that it does not.
Yeah, that's okay.
Rebranding. Yeah, rebranding is. Many people look at rebranding and get scared. Like, oh no, the old Coke versus the new Coke. I was old enough to remember that. But for me,
clear Pepsi.
It shows maturity.
Yeah,
it shows a maturing and it shows a transformation. I no longer wear the tennis shoes I used to want. I used to want Air Jordan tennis shoes.
Yeah.
Carol, give me some flip flops now, and I'm ecstatic.
Yeah,
I've matured or grown older, whichever. And sometimes that's what happens when we rebrand. The key to rebranding is that authenticity. Hey, this is where we're going, and here's why.
Yeah.
And welcome to the new journey. And if someone doesn't like that journey, feel free to find another journey.
Yeah. But appreciate us for our journey. And where we're going, and it really is that crossroads of mutual respect and empathy between people. And I think above all else, what you're doing over there with NeuroPersuasionCoach.com and everything else is really trying to build that empathetic link between people, trying to bring people back to the point of maybe stepping into somebody's shoes for 20 minutes while they're listening actively. Whether they're a host of a show, whether they are the owner of a business, whether they're hosting a show because of business, it really doesn't matter. Once again, it's that authenticity that people are tuning into. It's that authenticity of being a person that set people up to possibly even listen to what you're saying to begin with.
And for all of the podcast hosts, one of the things that you can kind of implement in your shows up front is, again, the authenticity, your true self, but letting people know ahead of time, it's kind of what we call pre-framing. We're going to frame the situation. We're going to pre-frame. We're going to let people know what to expect. And so I learned this. Now, I've had many teachers that taught on this, but I really learned this a lot from a hypnotist. And he said, when he had a hypnosis center, he said, when I was going to go do hypnosis for a living, he said, I found it very hard to find clients that took me serious. Oh, you're one of those people, or you're like a psychic, or you're a weirdo or something. He said, but I had rented a small office space. On one side was and I forgot exactly what it was, a massage parlor or something. On the other side was an adult bookstore, and in the middle is, hypnosis. And he said it was so hard, but he finally recognized that. And he moved into another little strip mall of doctors. There was an internal medicine doctor on one side, a psychiatrist on the other. He was in the middle between the two. He said, and instantly people started coming, paying more because he pre-framed, I'm a professional.
That's right.
And that was a big, big lesson. And so you can pre-frame even on your shows. I tell people on my show a lot, because I record a lot of my shows, and this as a podcast expert, you may cringe at this, but I'll record mine in the car. I'm like, hey, we're in the car with Wayne.
I love those. Yeah,
and so if you hear background noise, it's okay. But also, though, in my call, I'm like, today I'm going to cover something that could potentially change the way you influence others. If this moves you in any way, or you capture, I kind of pre-frame it, kind of set an expectation. Or the one I did 2 days ago is like, hey, this is totally off topic of what we normally talk about in neuropersuasion, but I think it's something very important for business owners. So just bear with me. If it's not for you, hop on the next episode. And I'm just letting them know up front. It's back to that authentic self and being authentic with your audience.
Yeah, precisely. Because, I mean, it really is about that authenticity. Once again, that being human and being willing to be human. And it brings it home so much. Thank you so much once again for taking the time today to come back on the show, talk about this. I've been so glad to see all of the great stuff you've been doing on social media with everything. I'm so glad to see where you're going with all of this. I cannot wait to hear the new stuff from the show. So,
thank you.
Before we let you go, one final chance for shameless self-promotion. Feel free to let everybody know where they can go to find you, to sign up for your coaching classes, to learn more about NeuroPersuasion, to listen to the show, to join the Facebook group, everything.
Absolutely. And I really believe in simplicity. So everything is at our one website now, NeuroPersuasionCoach.com. And when you jump over there, there's a blog. Our podcasts are on the blog. Yes, we're everything's working great, but we're still working on the website. But NeuroPersuasionCoach.com, you can pick up our podcast. We do a lot of different articles inside the blog. Jump one button over, work with Wayne. We're very transparent. We have 3 different packages as of the time of this recording. We have 3 different packages. You can look, and we're very transparent. Here's the process. Here's the fees. And I want people to feel comfortable. If we can help them, great. And if not, that's okay. Then maybe I can recommend somewhere else. When you go to the page, a pop-up should pop up and say, get your free report, how to persuade the unconscious mind. Now, I would highly recommend popping in your email address. You'll get all of our daily, several times a week we send out material. And we are working on a video series that will be given away free on how to persuade the unconscious mind. And for coaches and consultants, how to coach the unconscious so you get quicker and longer lasting results. But yeah, yourpersuasioncoach.com, that's my shameless plug. And I look forward to one of the things we offer is it's 30-minute coaching session for free if somebody wants to hop on there. And I love giving content. They usually turn into 45, 50 minutes. But if we can help somebody, great. There is going to be no hard sales pitch.
Yeah.
We're going to make an offer. If it's for you, and if it's not, that's okay too.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about you is that there is no pressure. It's more about helping people get to the right place, to help them find their direction, that 30 minutes can be so helpful. I encourage everybody to stop on by yourpersuasioncoach.com, sign up for that free consultation, and also sign up for that blog, because there's been some great stuff that I've seen come my way from you. Even on social media, make sure to go on by Facebook and check out the NeuroPersuasion Discover the Influence Code group. Because, the stuff you've been putting out lately has been fantastic. I've been very happy to see it. I love this turn that you are making, and this even rebrand of yourself. Like you said, it really does take a moment of confidence to go, what needs to happen right now? This, and to step out and do it. So good on you for following through for that. Hold the line while we close things out real quick. While he is out there taking care of his turnaround, folks, I encourage all of you as podcasters to go out and do the same. If you've been considering starting a show and you aren't really sure, hit record for a few minutes. Just talk. Talk it out. If it takes you writing a script and sitting down and doing it, pour yourself a glass of wine, open up a beer, sit down in a quiet place and write 15 minutes worth of material and then sit down and record it. That is literally what it takes. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep on podcasting. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Podcast Cadet Training Series. For more episodes and information, follow us online at podcastcadet.com and all major podcast platforms. Join our Podcast Cadet community group on Facebook for the latest in podcast industry news and conversation with industry professionals. The Podcast Cadet Training Series is produced in association with HC Productions and the HC Universal Network of Podcasts. For more great episodes and content, or for information about distribution or sponsoring podcasts, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com today. Thanks for listening, and until next time, remember to press record.